All right, all right, all right. I think we're live. We're here, folks, live and direct. Welcome. This is Ras Angola Rafari.
And I'm Jenna, and welcome to
People Talking Kali. Yes, and if this is your first time tuning into the show, People Talking Kali is for, by, and about Pikiti Tirji Kali, a show dedicated to practitioners of all camps and all instructors where we unite under our passion for this beautiful combat system. And if you're not in the PTK community, but you want to learn a little bit more about what we do, hopefully this show can give you some insight into our culture. Last but not least, this show is very interactive where you, the viewer, are involved in our conversation. Part of this show is to be a living record of who in our community has helped grow the system, who's helped sustain it, and who's moving forward in the future. That being said, welcome. Thank y'all for tuning in. Tonight we have a friend, special and honored guest. This good brother, Doug Marsh, I first knew him as Kali Doug. When I first got in the game years ago, I would see his name pop up and his comments were always informative. And then as time went on, I'm not sure if the brother reached out to me or I reached out to him, but either way, a connection was made and he was a huge support and resource just in giving myself a lot of confidence to move forward in the direction that I was moving with the group and Jen and I specifically with this show. Come to find out, Kali Doug has been in the PTK community for a long time, since early 2000. And as of recently, he started a podcast, the Sticks and Blades podcast, that you can find on a lot of platforms. So we're being able to get familiar with him. Some of you may have heard about him, and we're hoping a show like this is something where we can all get to learn more about this good brother in our community. That being said and done, we want to welcome you tonight. Kali Doug, how you doing, good brother?
Oh, I'm good, man. That was one hell of an intro. Thank you so much.
You know, I had heard, sometimes you just got to make it plain. But at the same time, people come out here on this show, they take their time, they give their energy. You don't know what to expect. You don't know. Sometimes it feels like viewers are asking questions, viewers aren't asking questions. But so it takes a lot to be on the show. So Jen and I really want to make sure we honor all our guests, good brother. Not only that, everything I said is exactly how I feel. You guys know me, I'm from the heart,
Thanks, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, man.
Good brother, we like to start the show with a status check. Where are you at right now? What's going on with you? And how are things given our current situation around, in the world?
Well, I'm here in Texas in San Antonio, and these numbers down here, the COVID numbers, it's gone crazy. So the state is basically on pause as far as doing further reopening. But as far as the family's concerned, everybody's good, man. I'm training. I'm trying to stay on top of as much as I can when I can. Try to stay in shape. I post a lot of videos, me jump roping, me doing yoga and all that stuff. I just want to stay in shape, man. I want to stay ready. So when that opportunity comes to teach again, or just to train again, cross hands again, I'll be ready, without skipping a beat.
That's right. That's right. You look great, good brother. And yeah, we are hearing on the news what's going on in other parts of the nation. Seems like the Northeast, we were there a couple of weeks ago. And so, all right, we got your visual back. So I'm glad to see everything's working out good for you, good brother. And I have seen some of your videos. I didn't know you did yoga, as a matter of fact, until I saw you on Instagram. Hey, good brother, sometimes your visual is dropping out, just letting you know. Can you hear me, sir? All right, we might have a tech issue here, family.
No, we can't hear you.
Hold on, everybody, stand by. All right, while Brother Doug's working out his tech issue, I just want to take a minute and honor everybody who is here at the moment. Salute to my man, Frankie, from the Nomad, Sensei Frankie Tamara. He's tuned in. Good talking to you today, sir. We want to talk a little bit about that. Also, MNG Royce from the Nomads. You guys had a great seminar today with Tuhon Ramel. A lot of guests from around the Kali community were there. Hey, Doug, you back? Doug, I see you visually, but we're gonna keep talking until I get some audio from you, sir. I might powwow with you on the side also about some troubleshooting. Jenna's gonna continue honoring who's here.
Yep, and we also want to thank Texas Rob for tuning in consistently, and he's also giving his greetings to everyone.
That's Robin MD.
And Mandala RV also sends his greetings as well. And we thank everyone for tuning in and being consistent, and and we also see from Jordan. I don't want to say your last name, Jordan Aguilar. Thank you so much.
These North Philly folks, family. No, I'm just kidding. Jordan Aguilar, thank you for tuning in. What's up with you too, good brother?
So I thank you all so much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll get Brother Doug back on. It looks like he's coming on and he's trying to connect his audio. But we hope everyone is well and everyone's continuing their training and that everyone is finding a little more peace and solitude and is staying healthy.
Give us an audio, brother. You up?
I'm up. I don't know what happened right there. I'm so sorry, y'all. That's embarrassing. It left me.
Life. Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, man, this is some new technology for all of us. What we tell everybody, and we'll say it here, we're all warriors first. Guests and hosts and tech people second. So, most important, man, you're safe and everything's good. And we didn't have an interruption for another reason. You know what I mean? So no EMPs or anything like that. All right.
COVID didn't get me, y'all. I'm good, man. I'm good.
Right.
I'm good.
Hey, I'm fine. And then he just blacks out. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. Well, it's good. It's good. I don't know if you got to hear, but we got the community. We got a lot of our regulars on deck, brother.
All right. Fantastic.
The show. And, just wanted to make sure everything was good.
Everything's good.
We were saying glad that everything was good. I was actually saying I didn't know you were training yoga.
Yoga. Yeah, so it's not like a traditional yoga. There's a program out called DDP Yoga. So it always says not your mama's yoga. It's basically about restorative practices, strengthening your back, your ligaments, tendons, and things like that. So I do it a few times a week. Like I said, it helps. Keeps the fat off.
Yeah. As you heard me say in another show, because of our capoeira training, there's stretches and things that I keep with that almost look like a yoga. But one of the things I try to incorporate, and I say it jokingly in our class, I say men over 35, men over 35, our lower back, our hamstrings, there's just certain areas we got to keep loose so that when we're in our 60s, 70s, and 80s, we're still walking upright and able to do the things that we see these amazing Tuhons do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that, man. Matter of fact, I'm 41. I'll be 42 tomorrow. So I got to stay on top. Make sure I'm around for a while.
Yeah. Hey, happy birthday, good brother.
Definitely.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
We got you on your birthday. Now you got to spar everybody.
That's right. Everybody. All of y'all.
Hey, man. Well, respect, man. Thank you for taking time and come on the show. Sure. You've been in PTK for umpteen years now. And
18.
I've been learning more about your journey. And just before the show, we were talking about your history. It's amazing. Let's get this conversation started, sir. How did you get started in the PTK? What got you on this path? How did it begin for you?
Well, it goes back to 1998, man. I had a really, really good teacher. First art I ever trained in was Aikido Jiu-Jitsu. I trained here in San Antonio with a gentleman by the name of Professor Lee Goodrich. And Professor Lee, he was a 7th degree in Sanukas Ryu under Dr. Moses Powell. And he was an 8th degree also under Grandmaster Shaka Zulu of Zujitsu Ryu. So I've just been real fortunate that early on, I got to see legends. I got to see what greatness was. So Professor Lee, he actually spent a lot of time over in the Philippines. He was in the Air Force. So he was there from 1968 to 1975. And while he was there, he trained Kung Tao, and he also got exposed to some Arnis. So, matter of fact, my first night training, I remember it was a Friday night, March of '98. It was a FMA class. I came in, there was a gentleman by the name of Guru Dan Lewis, who was one of Ernesto Press's black belts. And so the first class, it was Hubud. They were teaching us Hubud with the sticks and everything. So there was always like a FMA component in my training, in my initial training. So from about 98 to 2001, I'm here in San Antonio. I was a kid, I was like 19 years old. And in '01, I ended up moving to Austin. And I'm in Austin for about a year, and I just can't find a place to train. I mean, it's not easy to find people that do Sanukas. It's not easy to find people that do Zujitsu or whatever. So I'm looking like everywhere. I'm going to like Aikido dojos. I'm going to, I did Tai Chi for a little while. I did anything I can get my hands on that was, martial science. And I just couldn't find anything. So one day I crack open the yellow pages and I go into the martial arts, and I see this big ad, and it says, on the top, it says Filipino martial arts, Indonesian martial arts, Junfang Kung Fu, Jeet Kune Do, Capoeira, and the place was called the Center of Martial Arts. So I'm like, oh shit, this sounds like it might be all right, man. So I get on the phone, I call, and the gentleman, he says, well, what are you interested in? And kind of my ego at the time, I was like, well, I don't really need Filipino martial arts. I already train a component of that. Let me see what this silat is, because I've already done a little bit of it, or not done a little bit, but I've studied about it, I read about it. And so they give me a number to call. I call that number, and Leslie Buck picks up the phone, and we start talking. And I said, well, I'm interested in your silat. What system of silat do you teach? He said, I teach Penjak Silat Mandi Muda. So I go in there to the Mandi Muda class on a Sunday, and I like it, and I stick with it for about a year or so. And about a year into it, I kind of hit a wall. I mean, because like silat, it has its own specific flavor, but it's very similar to Aikijitsu in the sense that there's joint manipulations, there's not blocks, but breaks, takedowns, all that stuff. It's all in there. So it wasn't anything that I hadn't seen before. So I'm like, I'm kind of getting bored with this, man. Damn, I'm gonna have to go do something else. So I go to him after Mandi Muda class, because Leslie, he used to teach back-to-back classes. And so in between the Mandi Muda class and the Kali class, I went to him. I said, hey, Les, what's up with this Pikiti Tertia stuff? And y'all, listen, Leslie, he stopped in his tracks, man, and it was like he was a little kid. He said, oh man, Pikiti Tertia, and it's a bad impression of Leslie, but he's like, Pikiti Tertia, let me tell you about it. It has knives, sticks, and he just starts like being very enthusiastic about his response. And so, based on his enthusiasm, I was like, I have to try this. So I go in there, and just like everybody, I'm tripping over my own 2 feet. All right. I walked into this thing thinking I knew something about the Filipino martial arts, and I was shown that I really don't know shit about the Filipino martial arts. So forward triangle, tripping over my feet, reverse triangle, tripping over my feet. We're going through striking, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'm doing all the reaching. I'm looking bad, and the thing that got me was the fact that there was a process to it. It wasn't just, here's a technique, you do the technique, learn the technique, or you do the bua, here's the bua. There was an actual process. There was like a crock pot mentality to it. It's kind of like those old kung fu movies, you know what I mean? It's like sweep the floor. You end up learning to sweep the floor is actually something else. And so what I did, like as soon as Kali class was over with, and this is what I do anytime I train something new, I get in the car, I turn the radio off, and I just start talking to myself. I start talking to myself about what I saw. And so I'm talking to myself about the footwork. I'm talking to myself about the striking and everything. And I just got hooked. I got hooked because I couldn't let this thing beat me. You know what I mean? I had to figure it out,
Mm.
you know. So I got addicted right away, and even more so after I got home. I went online and I googled Bikini Tertia, and there was this old grainy video of Grandtuhon and Tuhon Bill McGrath. They're doing this Spotty Daga.
Mm.
And
I know that video. The
you know what I'm
eyeball.
talking about? Yeah, that's it. It's in
That's
black and
it.
white. And listen,
They're fucking
I ain't
so
never seen.
fast.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you took the words right out of my mouth. I was like, holy shit. This isn't what we're doing in class. This isn't it. But this is obviously the guy, and this is one of his top guys. So if I'm tripping over my feet now in another 5, 10 years, I might be able to do that much of of that I'm seeing. So being able to see the struggle in the beginning and then seeing that video again, that was another thing that helped continue to push me to get better and just motivated me.
Wow.
Mhm.
Can we all, I mean, I see myself in your story. I think we all, there's that story again. You're seeking, you're looking, trying to find a home. There's no martial arts in your area, and then it's destiny in a sense, because especially at that time you call a number and it's now Tuhon Leslie Buck,
Mhm.
and that begins your journey. And then the confusion and the struggling with the footwork, but saying, I'm not going to let it beat me. There's something more to it. I mean, I appreciate the way you broke it down. And, you're making me think that in those early days, because the videos that were out were so limited, maybe, it was that I felt like I know that one video sustained me personally for a long time, just because I couldn't understand what I was seeing, but I knew it was something beyond me,
It was
so
something.
that, yep,
It was special. It was special, right?
yeah.
So the way that I put it is just that I've over the past 18 years, or really past 22 years since I started training, it's just been good fortune. It's been luck. Being able to, like I said early on, have a world-class instructor, and then end up meeting, well, I shouldn't say instructor, teacher, because there's a difference between a teacher and instructor. But to have a world-class teacher, and then, to, like you said, happen upon Leslie, who was
Yeah.
world class. And, at the time, Leslie, he just didn't advertise him as being world class. He was real low key, So when I met him, he was what, 27 years old.
Wow.
And he reminded me, yeah, he was young, man. He reminded me a lot of Mateo. Mateo reminded me a lot of Leslie. So you got these young cats, man, that they just have this wealth of knowledge. They're wise, like beyond their years.
Yeah.
So Leslie, the way that he ran classes back then, it would be, footwork, of course, your basic striking in the beginning. And we all seen his mechanics and things like that. If you haven't seen his mechanics, you got, he's like the textbook Bikini Tertia guy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So he would do all the basic stuff, and the class, it would just pretty much consist of, making contact with your 5 attacks, going into passing, going into Sagung Labo, going into contradas, going into stick tapping. It was kind of like a hodgepodge of everything. And the Leslie Buck that you guys see now, this is a polished version of Tuhon Leslie. He's like at PhD level. When I met him, he was like valedictorian high school level. He admits that, through his the way that he taught back then, and the way he teaches now is totally different. So it wasn't like I was getting, all these subsystems and titles to things, but what I was getting was concepts.
Yeah.
I don't know if he saw it like that, but that's the way that I took it. The way that I saw it was, okay, well, this guy, he's giving me footwork, he's giving me clean body mechanics, and he's given me a sense of timing and rhythm. So I should be able to plug into all these other subsystems or whatever it is that people show me, because I have the foundation. You know what I mean? So we didn't have titles for things, back then, not that much.
Right. It was more important to be able to do it and apply it than to memorize the name. Especially, I could imagine at the time Pikiti was still growing here.
Yeah.
Did you continue to train Silat, or did you feel like, oh, I don't, you know, how did that work out? Did you train both?
I tried for a while, but I just fell in love with Kali, man. And not to say that I haven't trained some Silat, you know, other systems. I've had a chance to train Penjak Silat. Well, not Penjak Silat. It's some Malaysian Silat, Silat Kuntao Tekpi,
Oh,
with Robert Slomkowski. And I had an opportunity to see some of that. I did that for a while, but I haven't like done in-depth study on Silat. But there's definitely a lot of similarities in terms of the aggressiveness and the mindset of
yeah.
Bikiti and with Silat. It's very similar.
Did Tuhon Leslie have you guys? Was there sparring in those days? How did that look, or was it more foundation building?
It was foundation building. When I think he reserved that to the more seasoned students, because I remember there were two young guys. They were college students at the time, and he had them go into like some AAU competition or whatever, to where they did some stick fighting, and they actually won. They came in first place. But as a class, again, it was just more about mechanics building and stuff.
Wow. Mandala RV Guard is in the house. I don't know if I gave him the shout out. He said, "How's it going?" Oh, Jenna did. Was
RV?
Mandala present in those classes? Just out of curiosity.
No, he wasn't, but he was like a cousin, man. You know, that or uncle that would show up every now and again. We had these things back in the old days called the Texas Kali Association roundups, and I know that RV he was part of like the teaching cadre. You know, so he would show up. One roundup, Leslie might teach. Another roundup, it'd be another instructor like Renee Rodriguez that would teach, or Rudy Salazar. Then RV would be in there and he would teach. You know, so yeah, he was involved. RV was definitely around. He was there.
That's great.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we are here with our honored guest, Brother Doug, and he is coming to us live from Texas. His birthday is tomorrow. Give him some birthday love. Has
All right.
been training PTK for some time now.
Was that 98? You said, sir?
Early 2000.
No, 2002 is when I started. So 18 years.
2002.
18 years.
Wow. So
Yeah.
18-year veteran in the PTK game. He began talking to us about his PTK journey, learning through Tuhon Leslie Buck, and learning. And he expressed that, you know, he was dealing with a younger, instructor of Tuhon, and was able to see him progress to a certain polished instructorhood per se. But you talked about learning, you know, just the kind of mechanics and foundation, and how that was so essential. And, you know, I will say that, like you said, he said, you know, Tuhon Leslie is a textbook of what Kali looks like, especially in building that foundation. And I think it's I agree 100% that, you know, Tuhon Leslie it is almost like if it was a how-to book on Kali, it would be like his still shots that, you know, probably be in the textbook. And, you know, that's why I really enjoy it when I have the opportunity to train with him, because, you know, it makes Kali palatable, you know. And again, like he said when he was on our show, that, you know, he still wants to, you know, invoke the thought-provoking process of Kali, but sometimes it can be so frustrating to learn from someone if there's not a clear foundation. Did you find that even though you kind of were, you know, like everyone is a terrible beginner in the beginning, you know, we all had no matter how much we had trained martial arts, we still all kind of sucked in the beginning of Kali. But did you find that because you know, were able to, you know, work and grow your foundation with Tuhon Leslie, were you still able to kind of cross that hurdle in more of like a palatable fashion? Or were you like, you were working for, you know, a living and trying to figure this system out?
Yeah, like I said, I was addicted, man. I mean, there's still times right now to where if I'm alone in a hallway, I'm practicing takeoffs. You know, I'm doing my little stuff all the time. You know, so it's a constant thing. But with Leslie, I was going to bring up earlier as far as like seeing a progression. So we have all this stuff that we were doing in class that was very basic. And in late '02 in October, they had something called the Texas Kali Mastery Camp. It was the first one. And Leslie he put out a video, and it's still on YouTube somewhere. But he put out this video, and it's about a 15-minute video, and I'm seeing this stuff, and my jaw hit the ground, man.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like, we don't do this in class. Where the hell is this stuff at?
Yeah.
I want to do that,
Yeah.
you know. But again, you know, being able to see that end. So that camp, that was probably the most brutal camp I've ever been to. RV was there; he could tell you about it. And RV actually was part of the torture. So let me lay this out for y'all. we came in Friday night or Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. And I'm a young guy. At the time, I was about 23, 24. And my whole thing was, you know, I had no kids or anything. You know, it was just my girlfriend, who's now my wife, you know, and all I did was train. That was my thing. And I was like, man, if I could train all day, I wish I had an opportunity to do that. Well, you know, they gave me my wish. All right. So we get there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. We train to about 11 o'clock at night. And I'm hyped, man. I'm just like, yeah, you know, this is it. This is it.
Yep.
And they wake us up Saturday morning at 5 a.m.
Cool.
And we're in the Texas Hill Country. It's in October, and it's Texas cold. You know, cold dust in Texas is like 50 degrees and lower. So it ain't really cold, but it's cold to us. All right. And this campsite is like in the middle of nowhere, and we're out there. We're doing CBOT in the dark, and it's raining and cold. And we get through that. We have breakfast, and we basically train from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Again, minimal breaks. The only thing we had was like dinner and, you know, lunch, breakfast break, and there was like a presentation in between. And it was to the point in that camp to where, you know, it's not so much physical exhaustion, but you would black out mentally. You know, so you'd be going through some type of drill or some type of mechanic, and then you'd have like a lapse, and next thing you know, you're in front of somebody and you're doing the drill. You're in the middle of the drill. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, so the following day on that Sunday, woke up at 5 again, and we trained to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was it. But I'll tell you what, that camp, at the end of that camp, my mechanics got super clean because all we did was just train like animals, man.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. You know, there's you gotta there's a breakdown to build up. You know, there's a breakdown to build up. I almost want to jump ahead. Mental note, let's pin this question. If you do that to your students now, pin that. I'm going to ask you if you break them down and build them up, but hold that thought. You mentioned a couple of names. First of all, I know that video you're speaking about. That's another one of those classic videos that came out that was like, oh man, who is this guy? And Leslie was moving so fast. Renee, Rudy,
Rodriguez. Yeah.
Robert, just if you don't mind, brother, who are these brothers? What is their role in PTK? I've heard these names over the years myself. Maybe we could pay some homage.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So we'll start with the Texas Kali Association. So at the top of the Texas Kali Association, it was Erwin. Erwin was the founder. And I know that I saw Erwin around every now and again. I know he was busy. You know, he had the Tour de France to deal with Lance Armstrong and all of that. But Leslie was the president. A gentleman by the name of Rudy Salazar, that's a Mandala. He was like vice president. We had a guy named Mike Conley. RV, of course, was involved with that. Renee. All these guys, they're incredible practitioners. They're very low key. They don't get a lot of shine. But as far as I'm concerned, with my personal training, the people that really helped me along the way, there were two guys. It was Robert Slomkowski and the late Ricky Rillera. You know, those guys, as far as I'm concerned, they're like some hidden gems. The way, can I tell the story how I met Ricky?
Come on, let's go.
All right, so I leave Austin in 2003, and I come back here to San Antonio, and I was against my better judgment. I went to a certain Pikiti Tertius school here that was huge, and yeah, I'm not gonna get into who it was or whatever, but let's just say it wasn't a good decision on my part. Well, Ricky, he was there at my first class, and so I knew who he was. I'd seen him in pictures. I knew him by reputation, and Ricky, they called him Crazy Ricky. Grandtuhon called him Crazy Ricky, and he had another nickname. They called him the Flying Puño because this guy was about 5'4", 5'3", and he'd spar you, but he had like a vertical leap, man, where he'd jump up and he'd smack you upside your headgear with that puño. So they called him the Flying Puño. So I walk into the class, I see Ricky over there, and I'm like, oh shit, that's Rick Rillera. Okay, let me go over here and say what's up, man. So I walk over, I shake hands, introduce myself, and he's real cool. And we're in there, we're training, and it's during the last 30 minutes of class, we had sparring. Now, I'm shitting my pants, man, because I had never sparred before at all.
Right, we just asked that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had like zero experience sparring. And it wasn't full contact. It was just tech sparring. It was knife tech sparring. And so we had the hockey glove on and we had, the racquetball goggles. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, damn, it's a 2-minute round. I'm gonna have to get in here and spar. I'm trying to hype myself up. And so they get to me, right? And they were gonna pair me up with somebody, and out of nowhere, Ricky goes, I want him. And I'm like, oh shit. I gotta fight Rick Rillera. I've heard about this guy, man. So
Flying Puño.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, and Ricky, he was a little older at that time. I should say older. He was like in his mid-40s. He was kind of round and everything. And it's like ding ding. I'm sitting there, and next thing I know, man, he does something and he like hits my goggles, and my goggles shift to the side of my head. And I just feel stabs and cuts and all kinds of things. He's tearing my ass up. He's eating me alive, man. It was like fighting a Tasmanian devil or 2 or 3 people, right? He's just everywhere.
Yeah.
The end of the round, it happens. He comes over, he puts his arm around me. He says, hey, man, you move pretty good. You must have trained with Erwin before. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
He's like, I can see it in your mechanics, man. I know that you've trained with Erwin. I said, no, I haven't trained with Erwin personally. I said, but I've trained with Leslie. He goes, I can see it in your mechanics. And so from that point, he kind of took me under his wing to where he was like my mentor, So when we would get together and train, again, it wasn't about like, this is this. It was, you know what? Here's a concept. Let's work this concept. And just to go back about Ricky, he had the gift that Grandtuhon has to where he could look at a person, he can see certain things of how he can make the art work for you. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to mold you into look like a clone of somebody else, he would sit there and he would like really personalize Pikiti for you. And through Ricky, I ended up meeting his best friend, Robert Slomkowski. The way I met Robert, what was it, outside of a Filipino restaurant. And so I see Robert the first time, and he looked kind of dorky. He had his hat up here and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way in hell this guy, come on, man. Come on. And so we're getting into this conversation about, empty hands. And so, Robert's like, if you punch, so I punched at him and he like slaps the shit out of my hand. My fingers went numb. And Robert, he gives you like this murder face after he hits you, and he's like looking at me. I'm like, oh, damn, this dude's for real.
Yeah.
And so from that conversation, that led to, like a lot of coffee sessions over at Robert's house, a lot of personal training over at Robert's house. Robert, he introduced me into full contact stick sparring. I mean, that was kind of like, that's the way we trained back in those days in the early 2000s. We'd get together, we'd drink coffee, we'd look at videos, we talk a little bit, and we get a concept going. And for instance, like Robert had this telephone pole that was about maybe 5 or 6 feet high, and he'd give us a Kamagong stick, and he'd just have you go around sidestepping, doing laterals, sidestep, come up with tick, sidestep, come up with tick, over and over and over and over and over again. And so he's building up like this explosive energy, right? To where you're able to put your hip into every single one of his strikes, right? And he's like, you got it? Okay. Then we go in the backyard and we beat the shit out of each other. You know, that was our classes.
Yeah, wow. Who did and I apologize, Rob, if I've mispronounced your name in the past on the show. So Rob Slomkowski was PTK as well.
Yes, yes.
And
See,
he was, mhm.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask, like, was he part of that the Texas Kali Association?
No, see, I know Ricky would come in and he would visit. I never saw him personally come over there, but like way before I got started in Pikiti Tertia, I've seen pictures of him with Irwin and like Leslie and stuff like that. He'd show up to these events. So I don't want to say that they were directly involved with the organization.
Got it.
But and Robert, I know he wasn't. He was just low key. You know, Robert, he actually started his Pikiti training in Oklahoma. I don't remember the exact story, but again on YouTube, if you look it up, it says like Leo Gahe 1984. It's like a 12 or 15 part video, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see all those guys in there and how well they move?
Yeah.
That was their first time ever doing Pikiti Tertia, and Robert was in that picture or in that video. You can see him in the background.
Okay.
And so he was like, well, yeah, I remember all that. He's like, we trained for about 12 hours a day or whatever, and we just start sparring. It was just mechanics and sparring.
Wow.
That was it.
Another old school video that was like you're trying to decipher what GT is doing in this 84 video flickering.
The only difference is that GT is like young and
it was
spry,
a younger GT
like,
moving in a way you're just like, oh man.
And that's the thing that people they forget also. You know, a lot of these old school guys, they trained with Grandtuhon when Grandtuhon was young. You know, we think he's crazy now, but he used to have people doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, bear crawls on the blacktop.
Yeah.
You know, crunches on the asphalt and the hot Texas sun. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. You know, for him to get the respect of all these warriors, you know, he had to. He showed them. I am that. You know.
Yeah.
When they eventually did you get to meet GT? How did you eventually get to meet the Grandtuhon, and how did that happen, if I may ask?
Yeah. All right. So it was right before I had left Austin in 03. Leslie had him up there for a seminar. And that was my initial meeting with him. And, you know, I never really trained privately with him. It was just through seminars. But he knows who I am if I show up or whatever. But that was my meeting, you know, my dealings with him. One special time, Ricky actually got this hooked up to where after a class down here in San Antonio, Grandtuhon was in town. And Ricky, he came up to me in class. He said, hey, man, me and Leo, we're going to go out to dinner after this, you know, and we'd like for you to come. So, okay. And so we went out to dinner to this Filipino restaurant. It was like after hours, and they got it hooked up to where, you know, we got to get in. And, you know, Grandtuhon, he kind of laid down what it was that he was showing us that night, kind of the thought process behind Pikiti Tertia, you know, and about mechanics building. And one of the things that he said was that, you know, you have to find a way to use these mechanics and make them your own. You know what I mean? Not make it your own art, but, you know, make it work for you. You know, so going all the way back in my martial arts journey, one thing that Grandmaster Zulu would say, he said he don't want clones. He don't want clones of himself. Yeah. And I would think that Grandtuhon and the rest of the Tuhons, they wouldn't want people to try to be clones of them. That's because right. One thing you got to understand is, you know, you're not him. You don't have his instincts. You don't have his depth of understanding. You don't move like him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you have to get comfortable in your own skin. And if that means you doing something a little different than what the textbook is, well, who cares? You know what I mean? As long as it works for you. You know, I always tell my guys, I say the thing that a lot of people forget are these arrows. These arrows on the logo, they leave that out. Those arrows, they mean progression and evolution and change. So the way that the art might have been taught in 1897, I'm pretty sure that it's way different than now. So the way that you learn the art from your initial teacher, whoever it is, 10, 12 years down the road, I'd hope that that you're doing something a little different, something a little more personalized than you.
Yeah.
So you look at the Pikiti Tertia system, or even the training concepts, they're building blocks, right?
Right.
They're ABCs. So you learn footwork, those are your alphabets. You learn drills, those are your words and sentences.
That's right.
And then from there you build, right? But just like anything, just like music, you learn music the same way. You learn the notes, you learn how to read, you learn this chromatic scale. But from all of that, you end up being able to create something that's beautiful, something that's different, something that's unique, something that's your own signature. And that's what this whole thing is about. Again, it isn't about trying to look like somebody or move like somebody. It's about finding yourself within the art, because eventually, the art becomes you.
Yeah.
That's
right. I think a lot of people they have to ask themselves why they're in it. I was talking with my daughters the other day. We Jenna took the girls out on a nature walk, and I took them out we went by the water. And I was like, it's not even so much that I think I teach people self-defense or combat. It's more about helping people go within and learn more about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when I think about what you're saying about it's like a musical expression, we're inspired by these masters, but we should only then be inspired to be our best self, as opposed to, it's natural to emulate what you're inspired by. Speaking of music, you want to play that song on the saxophone or the guitar. I want to strum like Bob Marley, but but that's just in the beginning till I find my own style, and also I think another way to look at it, and part of me, just the metaphors, farming and camping.
Right.
There's a textbook way to farm, but every farmer knows when you get out there in the field, and you're dealing with the soil, and you're dealing with the elements, and you're dealing with the weather, textbook is now, you got to make it work for you. You got to figure that out. And every farmer can plant the same crop. You could have two farmers planting the same crop in the same climate, but they've all developed their own way to grow it. And so I try to look at it like that. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Yeah, it does. And at the end of the day, guess what? It's still farming.
Right. And it's producing great food, That's a beautiful foundation.
Folks, if you're just tuning in,
Jenny,
we are here.
That's the queen is here, balancing me. I'm ready to go in.
We're here with our honored guest, Brother Doug Marsh from out of Austin, Texas.
San Antonio.
I'm sorry, pardon me. He trained in Austin, Texas, but he's actually in San Antonio now, pardon me. And you're also a ranked instructor. Please tell us about your current training programs.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only rank that I've obtained thus far is Lock on Guru. That was under Rick Rillera. And the way that came about, it was kind of funny. We were talking on the phone, and he said, well, let me meet you at the park, man. We're going to go over some things at the park. And so we're sitting here, we're doing knife work. We're like doing knife tapping. And it's like a training blade. We're sitting there. It's one of those rubber knives. 5, 8, 9, 5, 8, 9. He starts picking up the speed. And I don't know how the hell he did it, but somewhere between those feeds, there was a live blade. 5, 8, 9, 5, 8, 9, 5, 8, 9. It's going fast. Over. Doing this. He goes, yeah, I think you're ready. It's time for you to teach. And I'm like, what do I do? He's like, just, he said, promote the Filipino culture and art. He said, I think you're ready. Yeah. And so from that point, I started my first group. That was in 2007. And just like any other instructor, you go out there and you like have this idea of what you think your classes are going to be like. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to draw it up and we're going to do this. Everybody's going to look like that. And you get out there and you realize that it isn't that easy. You know, so for people that are watching, you're trying to become an instructor, you're trying to rush to it. Hey, take your time, enjoy the ride, because this shit is hard. This is not an easy thing to do. It looks easy if people have the experience, but let me tell you, you know, from like 2007 to 2010, here I am. I'm trying to teach like Leslie. I'm trying to have uh, the cunning of Robert and Ricky.
Mhm.
I'm trying. There were Doug Marcaida videos out, and I'm trying to look like Doug Marcaida. I actually, you know, would talk to him from time to time, and I would try to spit some of his stuff, and it didn't come until like years later that I started getting comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
It forces you to do that, you know. And along the way, as far as teaching is concerned, I started meeting all these other people that are within the arts. You know, there were people that would come from out of town. They would be from other FMA systems.
Mm.
You know, so at that point, like for instance, there was a guy named Ben Belmaris. He was a Kali Illustrissimo guru, and he'd come to class. I show him Pikiti because he was interested in learning Pikiti. But privately, we just kind of work, and I would see things that were a little bit more effective in Illustrissimo than it was in Pikiti, and it wasn't a knock. But
Mm.
this guy was catching me with some stuff when we would spar,
Mm.
and I'd ask him, I'm like, well, what is that? And he's like, oh, well, this is this. This is how we use our footwork to do this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so at that point, I started incorporating, you know, some of those concepts and things like that, but put a Pikiti spin on it,
Mm.
you know, to where, again, you know, it's still Pikiti Tertia, but at its core, but the art itself, it developed for me into like kind of other things, you
Mm.
know, so I started just continue to learn my limitations, and eventually got comfortable enough to where I could come out and be a better teacher. But again, it took some time. It took a lot of time. I'm still finding my way.
What's the name of your group, brother?
Uh, we don't necessarily have a group. I have or a name. I have South Texas Kali.
Got you.
That,
Correct.
yeah, I just call it South Texas Kali.
That's good.
That's what it is.
And that's on Instagram as well. Folks can look you up there. Is that correct?
Yeah, they could. Yeah, they can look it up. South Texas Kali on Instagram as well as on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay,
Right.
that's great. I want to just mention Gennaro Caballero Jr. said good evening and happy birthday, Doug. You got a couple of birthday shout outs from the guests that we also
Hey.
mentioned.
Thank you. That's
Morgan-
JJ, one of my guys. What's up, JJ?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Citadel Combat Arena, our friend Morgan is also tuned in, and Texas Rob is asking and I guess saying, how important is rank in the world of PTK? I've been training in FMA for over 20 years and I have no rank.
Your skills, your rank.
Here it is.
Your skills, your rank. Okay. I put it like this, man. If we had a seminar right now and you were teaching the seminar or whoever, I would try my damnedest to be in the back of the crowd. That's the way I am. I try to hide because I want to learn too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But eventually, you know, you can tell if somebody got it or if they don't got it. To answer his question, the rank really doesn't mean anything.
Correct.
You know, it's the work. You know, if I had the authority, I could give you the rank of Tuhon right now. That don't mean that you are that. It don't mean anything.
That's right. You know, and you know, and we agree with you, sir. It's more important about skill, and we tell our students better to have a rank and have people say that's all they are than have a rank and have people be like that's what they are. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, you know, it's almost like stay humble and grow. And just like you said, sir, don't rush the journey. Enjoy the journey.
Hey, I always tell my guys, I say I sell crock pots. I don't sell microwaves, man. So you got to take your time. You got to take your time. There's always, you know, that advanced stuff. All the advanced stuff is, which is kind of common sense, is nothing but a breakdown of the basics. So get really, really good at those basics, man, and you know, build those skills. All the other stuff will come. Somebody will recognize you. You'll get that shout out eventually. You get that recognition.
Right. If that's, if you're even in it for that. And like I think you heard you say some of the early stuff you were training, 5 attacks, contradas, second labo, reverse triangle, forward triangle. I mean, that right there is a lot. Is years of study. And yeah.
And that's what kept me, for many years. I mean, as a matter of fact, I mean, that's a lot of that stuff is still stuff that I train to this day. As far as trying to keep sharp, that's it. It's just the basics. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy about it. Just the basics.
So, brother, in your training, it was more about concepts and applications. Did this Doce Methodos or Tri-V, when did you decide to go deeper in and try to understand these terms? What do they mean to you?
All right, so we all know that there's three schools of thought when it comes to Pikiti Tertia. You have the 64 attacks, you have the Doce Methodos, and then you have, the Tri-V. So to answer your question, I've seen a little bit of everything, so like when Leslie would teach in those days, we did the Obsidario, we did the 64 attacks. He didn't sit there and say, well, we're learning the Tri-V, we're doing Lima Lima or Picadune Trigo. He didn't do any of that. He just took us through the motions, and then when I came to San Antonio, it was a Tim Wade group. I didn't mean to say that, but it was a Tim Wade group, and they did the Methodos. Okay. And, I saw a difference, and not a bad difference, but it was just a difference in terms of how people moved and things like that. And it seemed more like everybody was trying to look like everybody else, and they even had like, ranking requirements, kind of look like a Kempo school. It'd be on the walls, like for, this rank, you have to have this rank, you have to have that. So that structure, it kind of turned me off, because when it comes to like charts and things like that, well, what happens when you hit the end of the chart? Then what? Do you know it all? No, you don't. You know what I mean? And let me just say this, it's not about the catalog of information, it's about the quality of the information that you have. So the Tri-V formula, I guess I had some of that, but I don't really look at Pikiti Tertia as, well, I'm doing the 64 attacks or I'm doing Doce Methodos. I just look at it as a thing. You know what I mean? It's just a way of doing something. It's a way of doing something. I don't think that, me personally, my own personal opinion, I don't think that there's a big difference between the 64 and Tri-V in terms of movement. Or, even with the Methodos in some regards, there's no difference. I don't see it.
It seems it's about methodology from our perspective. A lot of it is the difference is it's all Pikiti. There's no difference there. It seems from our understanding, it's about the methodology and how you approach, how you set up what you're gonna have the student train and how.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
To be, whereas Tri-V is bridging more at a more rapid, and Doce Methodos is very nuts and bolts. But it's all there, and
yeah, it is. And my experience with Tri-V, again, with my untrained eye, I'm no expert or claim to be, but what I see it as being is the ability to be able to jump from one set of concepts into another set of concepts. So let's say that we're doing something as simple as Daco Bi Puño. So we're in there, we're doing Daco Bi Puño. So you have the Watik, you have the uppercut coming down, doing all this, right? So what about at this point, if I umbrella on the inside, I check, I give that puño, as soon as that stick comes up, what if I end up doing an angle 2? Well, now it goes from a Watik to where it's a contrada now, right? Again, once I get to that point, I jab that in, that stick comes up, I can pass that out to where now it becomes a passing thing, right? We can get into it again. Now it's a Sagung Labo thing. Now I can lock somebody down if I need to lock them down, whatever. You know what I mean? So to me, that's what it's about, is being able to bridge together those concepts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And see, that's not even a catalog of information. That's being able to say, you know what? Here's this piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
How can I make this piece of the puzzle this piece of the puzzle? How can I incorporate these things?
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's try V to me, instead of it being, categorized. Because, once we write things down and we say, well, it has to be like this, well, that thing dies.
That's right.
It's dead. And this is a living art.
Mm-hmm.
And the art, it being living, that means, again, that it's going to change. It's going to progress. It's not set in stone.
Yes.
So if you hear people talk about the purity of the art and things like that, I think they mean purity in terms of the training methodology, but not purity in terms of the application of the art, because we all do it different. You should be able to go from one Pikiti Tertia instructor to another Pikiti Tertia instructor, and you see maybe that this instructor is a little better at articulating this point of the art versus this instructor is good at doing this. And they might do things slightly different, but then when you break it down to the core, what is it? It's footwork and ones and twos and a couple of thrusts. That's it. That's all it is. It's just basics.
How do you currently sustain your personal training? What are you personally training right now, like looking to develop and get better on your own? And how do you continue to grow in your knowledge of Pikiti or FMA XYZ?
Well, what I do, man, is what I've been saying the whole time, is just footwork, ones and twos. That's it. Footwork, ones and twos. If I want to mix it up, I'll throw a tick in there or something like that. But the thing that I end up doing is not just closing myself off to Pikiti Tertia, because we get into this this point to where we play this Pikiti game. You know what I mean? To where we're all doing drills, moving a certain way, looking a certain way. But what happens with Pikiti when we go out there and we train with another art? We have to be able to still maintain the integrity of the art, but also still be able to perform under that pressure, right? So the way that I grow is just reaching out to other people in the FMA. Maybe Leslie might not be available, or I might not be able to go to Austin or something like that. I might be able to reach out to somebody like my brother Tuhon Brandon Jordan of Mandala Mandarigma. That's a Derobio Eskrima. And hop on a Zoom with him and look at what they're doing and see some of the similarities and their use of body mechanics, and see how I could incorporate that into my own personal game. Or I might reach out to somebody else, that does something like, let's say, Gari Madarnis, and I take a look at what they're doing, with their use of ranging and things like that. And I'll say, okay, well, that looks a little bit like what we're doing. How can I, again, make that fit into my own personal game?
Yeah.
So I don't look at, again, collecting all this information, this catalog of information. I look at how to improve myself. You know what I mean? Instead of, like having drill after drill after drill after drill. I get bored with that stuff. I've tried for years, y'all, to to go by a curriculum, and I just can't do it all the time. It's hard. I'm just better with concepts.
I respect your journey, brother. It's if you're not from the era of the backyard trainer, or where it wasn't about rank and it's hard to articulate what that was like, because I think what you mean when you say we play the game of Pikiti, I think I know what you mean, and I relate to it, where sometimes this can feel like a high school popularity. You're not really training. It's almost like it feels better to look like I'm training and be in the pictures, and I think that's a small percentage, but that small percentage is the majority of the Facebook folks expressing on PTK. So there is a small percentage that is playing that game, and it's like, but I think what's good is that the viewers on this show and a lot of the folks, hopefully now, are trying to move towards not playing that game. But I like that you step out of your own comfort zone and your bubble to learn. For Jenna and I, we're so PTK, we just like, I wake up thinking PTK. And this was with Capoeira. It's like, it's hard for me there's so much about PTK that I want to study. That's what sustains me. But I love to hear ambassadors like yourself, because I don't want to stay in my own bubble. I want to hear, and you're mentioning other arts and grandmasters' names who I'm unfamiliar with. That's why it's like I want to hear more about the other FMA systems that are out there. And you're in. Say that again.
No, all I was gonna say is, Pikiti's like, it's like my fraternity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a fraternity to me. At my core, the way that I move is Pikiti. It is. There's no getting away from that. So I don't want to give anyone the impression that I'm just like some freelance FMA guy. I'm not.
You're not a bohemian. No, you're not.
No. I'm a Pikiti guy, but again, I like to go outside that comfort zone and see how the art stacks up against other arts.
And you said you're not just out here collecting techniques. You're trying to be a better you first and foremost, and see. And if it works, if something better, different is working, and it works for you, then why not? A lot of times on the show, Doug, you've asked our former guests about Big Springs, Texas. And I feel like they've answered it, but there's more to what you were asking when you were asking about it. Could you give us tell us about Big Springs, sir?
All right. So I bring that up because that was like, as far as the way I was taught and the way that I look at it, that was like one of the biggest coming out parties for Pikiti Tertia as a whole. So in Big Springs, Texas, Grandtuhon and a lot of the guys from the East Coast. I know Bill McGrath was there, Eric Nows, Irwin was there, Tom Bizio, Eddie Joffrey. I know Tuhon Phil was probably there. So they all converged on this town. And from what I understand, they had like a parade and things like that for these guys and all of that. And I saw tape of this Big Springs camp, and it was just amazing, man. I mean, you're talking about a young Grandtuhon that couldn't have been older than maybe 48, 50. A young Dan Inosanto, and these guys are flying all over the place. I mean, just flying. And at that point, I want to say Bill McGrath probably had been in Pikiti maybe about 10 or 11 years. So you could just see like all these guys are young, they're hungry, and they're together and they're banging it out for days. So that camp itself, I haven't been able to see the tape. Hopefully somebody out there has a tape. It's a textbook Pikiti Tertia camp. If you want to see what Pikiti Tertia is about, being able to see everybody young do it the way that they were doing it, it was incredible. It was incredible. And we'd always have that as kind of like the thing to prime us for our training, with Ricky and Robert. They pop in that VHS tape of the Big Springs camp, and we would just study the movement. We weren't looking at like, they're doing this drill. We're just like, damn, Tom Bizio is smooth. Look at that, man. Look at the footwork, and we'd go out there and we'd try our best to emulate. Now, Ricky was there at the Big Springs camp. And so, that video would jog his memory a little bit. And we'd get out there and, we'd work some of that stuff. But the Big Springs camp, it was just like this big deal. It was like the Woodstock of Pikiti Tertia.
If anyone has any video or footage of this camp, we want to put the word out now. Let's try to bring this to the surface so we could see some more about it. Well, I'm glad we got to hear from you about this camp, sir.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Tell us about your podcast.
All right. So the Sticks and Blades podcast. Well, I want to thank y'all. Y'all are actually the motivation behind it because, I'm a big fan of people talking Kali. I think that what you guys are doing is incredible and unique. So when you guys went dark for a little while, I was like, there's this void and I need my fix.
Yeah.
Saturdays, I'm counting on this show, and y'all were on a roll, man. I mean, y'all were on a roll. Y'all putting out some great shows.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, I said, well, how can I fill this void? And do I know anybody that could be on this show? So I started thinking, and I said, who do I know? And started going through my friends list on Facebook, people that I've talked with, brothers that I've talked to on the telephone. and eventually, you know, started reaching out to a lot of these guys, these masters, and they've agreed to come on the show. But one of the big things about the show that that's important to me is that I want to go ahead and give some exposure to some of the lesser known masters, in particular the black masters of the Filipino martial arts. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of black brothers out there that are involved in the FMA that, you know, they're unsung for some reason or another. You know, you got guys like Guru Doug Pierre, you know, who is like one of Remy Precious' top students. You have a guy by the name of was it Tom Bolden? Tom Bolden, who was, you know, one of Remy Precious' top guys, and he's a legend. And you know, I mentioned him before, Tuhon Brandon Jordan of Mandala Mandarigma. He's the first black Tuhon in the Filipino martial arts here in the United States. And there's others. And I'm like, I don't understand why people don't know who these people are. And there's other guys, you know, like for instance, Cliff Stewart. You know, he was one of the first black Pendacars here in the United States.
Wow.
You know, nobody talks about these guys. So I said, before any of these guys start passing away, or, you know, they just get forgotten about, I want to have a platform to where they can come on and they can tell their story so the world can hear about it.
Yeah.
You know, and it started to become more urgent or more of a pressing issue when Baba Kalindi passed away.
That's right.
You know, so
Right.
when I saw Baba Kalindi go,
Wow.
I'm like, wow, yeah, everybody should know who Kalindi was.
Everyone should know who Brother Kalindi is. I agree.
And so, like I said, that's one of the things with the podcast that I wanted to do. I wanted to give a platform to the black masters of the FMA. That's not to exclude anybody else, but I want people to be able to come on there and get their roses while they're still here. We should be talking about these people and honoring them while they're here and giving them exposure.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I think that's number one, that's an awesome platform, and that's an awesome thing. You know, all the works that we're doing with these podcasts, you know, we talked about it before, is that, you know, we are producing archives. We're producing archives,
Living records.
and creating records, and that's the beauty of the age of technology, and, you know, the way that we're expressing it now. There's pros and cons, and one of the pros is that we get to archive information. And, you know, I definitely agree that, you know, it is definitely hard for, it's definitely a known unknown that, you know, there are so many amazing masters of African descent, especially in the United States. And for the same reasons why, you know, we have issues outside of that, you know, we are under-recognized in martial arts. And it's very important because there's a beauty in the sweat and the tears, but also the partner work. You know, a lot of these masters you're speaking of, I'm sure, were great partners and also were like helping to, push the system forward as well. You know, every time you have a student in your class, you know, we also, and Glo and I said, we get a training partner. So every time we get a new student, you know, even though they have to learn and, you know, they're somewhat dependent on us, we also get a training partner. And so there's so many committed, you know, like the Steve Muhammad's, you know, who is literally walking into a martial arts studio often, you know, and being used for sparring.
If you don't know who Steve Muhammad is, that's another name you gotta look up, folks.
But
can I say something about Steve Muhammad?
Of course.
For those of y'all that don't know, was it Enter the Dragon? Is that the one?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay,
it was Enter the Dragon. It was,
okay.
Yes.
Oh, all right. So for y'all that don't know, Jim Kelly, when he's in that dojo, you see Steve Muhammad. He's kind of bald and has the afro. That's Steve Muhammad. That's a bad dude. As a matter of fact, one of his contemporaries, there's a guy by the name of Vic Moore.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And I've spoken with him recently, and I'm hoping to have him on the podcast to tell his story about him and Bruce Lee, and that whole encounter with him and Bruce Lee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So Steve Muhammad was there. He saw it.
Exactly.
That is that's great, brother, that you got the show to honor that. And to, you know, you hear about these masters in other martial arts, and there's a story here in FMA as well.
Right. Yep. And like you're saying, it's important to create these archives. It's important that we recognize the hard work that is done on, the parts of the people that help to evolve the system, no matter what their background is. But we do see an underrepresentation. And of course, I have to say, how many Black women are you going to have and see training Filipino martial science? How many times are you going to see Black women in general recognized in martial arts? It's almost unheard of. We're talking about already a small population, even smaller for Black women. So, but I think it's beautiful.
Filipino martial arts has that space for them, though. That's what Jen is saying.
But I think it's beautiful that you're
gotta do some mansplaining real quick,
But it's beautiful that you create that platform because, like I said, you're creating a record, and we're that's beautiful works.
And we're honored to know that we had a little part in that. Sorry for going dark, but it was a blessing because your podcast came out of it. We're never in competition. We want to see more and more and more shows like this. Really quick, I want to shout out a student of ours, brother Udu Netcher has tuned in. Paulo Rubio also is saying hi.
Paulo.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, he said what up? And Ali Johnson from Chicago is also tuning in. And as we were talking, folks are agreeing that, it's good to record history. Sensei Frankie spoke about his 3 Asian Grand Masters that passed away, also rise in power to them. We got to record this. So the podcast, where can people find it? How can they learn more about it?
Okay, so it's available on about 7 different platforms. So if you're an iPhone user, you can just look in podcast and look up the Sticks and Blades podcast. And there's 5 episodes out. You talk about Paulo Rubio. That was one of my most recent episodes with Paulo. We sat down and we had a pretty honest talk about Pikiti. Respectful, of course. We weren't trashing anybody. We were just, keeping it real like he does.
That's right.
But it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Breaker, Castbox, Radio One, I believe, and just pretty much everywhere where podcasts are available. Check it out, man. I think you guys will enjoy it. It's good.
It's great.
We try not to be too serious. We have fun in there.
That's right. We're gonna check it out. And now that we got him on the show, how much has Paulo been an influence, brother? Honestly.
Listen.
Brother Paulo is a huge influence, and one of the reasons how we structure the show and do the show. It's great to see you on here, good brother. I had to shout that out.
Listen, I had reached out to Paulo a couple of months ago, and I asked him to listen to my podcast just to get his opinion. And he gave his opinion, and I could have took it as something to where it hurt my feelings, but I said, he's a professional. This guy's a professional in media. And so if he's giving me some advice on how to make it better, or, I'd be a fool not to listen to it. But Paulo Rubio, it's hard for people to listen to him because he kind of challenges the status quo.
That's
I'm not going to go too much into it. You can listen to the podcast if you want to hear what we have to say on my platform. I don't want to muddy any waters here, but he's real. And he's a blessing right now because he has a passion. He has a passion for documenting this stuff, and he does beautiful works of art, man. I mean, if you check out his Funker Tactical stuff, the way that he helped to put Doug Marcaida on, like he made Doug Marcaida, basic, in my opinion, like a celebrity. He made him look great, in all these videos, so to have him around to where, similar to me, his base is Pikiti Tertia, but he loves the FMA as a whole. And he wants to make sure that all these stories get told. And Paulo, I'm still waiting on that Henry Aspara documentary. I need to see that soon, very soon.
Yeah. Well, it's an honor to have him actually sit back and get to be a guest and a viewer, while he's inspired the folks on this show here right now. So we got the Sticks and Blades podcast. We got South Texas Kali. Any other projects or upcoming events or things you got in the works that you want to share with us, my friend?
No, not necessarily, man. I'm kind of taking a break from teaching. I'm at the point right now to where I just want to be a student. You know, I've given 13 years of my life to teaching and making that sacrifice on a weekly basis and giving my time to a lot of people, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. But going forward, at least for the foreseeable future, especially when COVID lifts or we find something to where we're able to travel safely, I plan on traveling to several different places to cross hands with folks and to learn,
Yeah.
you know, and just to experience that. I just want to go back to being a student,
Yeah.
and I'm blessed to where, you know, martial arts isn't the way that I earn a living. It's just a passion. It's a thing that I do. It's a hobby. It's a lifestyle. But you know, I need to get back to being a student again,
Yeah. You
more
know, it's
so.
like you go from that feeling where it's like, wow, I'm like a ship without a harbor, as I often say. You're trying to find a home. You actually find the home, and then it's kind of like, you know, I'm ready to go back to, you know, that feeling of being lost again, just to be rediscovered. I think I know what you mean with that, sir.
Well, and just to keep it 100% real, I mean, it's hard, man, when you have a group, you start bringing people along and they get to a certain level, and you know, life happens, and then you know, you might have some new people come in, so you have to press reset each and every time, and you know, that's hard. And you know, given that, again, I don't do this for a living, I don't have an advanced class or anything, so class is just class,
Yeah.
you know. So there's times to where me personally, I feel that I'm holding back my more seasoned guys, you know, by having to take them through some of the more rudimentary parts of the art, you know. So again, I'll be out there. I'll be training. I'll definitely be training. I'll be out there making videos on social media, but you know, not teaching too much
Right.
anymore.
And you know, I agree definitely that, you know, it is important sometimes to have to, you know, change your path in the sense of how you're experiencing, you know, what you're doing. You know, in particular with PTK, you know, I do agree that we're talking about how, you know, it can be the foundation is really the key of PTK. But then also, you know, what we're coming to learn is that PTK is also really vast. I mean, there's so many angles and directions that you can go with the concepts that can sharpen your sword and polish, you know, the diamond, the pearl that you're trying to make out of your practice. And, you know, really being a teacher just means that you're committed to being a student. So,
Yeah.
you know, and PTK is one of those systems that's so vast that you can literally, you can teach
Spend
and
your
be a
life
student. You can teach and be a student for the rest of your life. Like you really
Yeah.
can. And so I really think it's beautiful that you're looking to, you know, like you said, let your ship sail a little bit so that way you can kind of return to a new route and, you know, set a new foundation
Yeah.
for yourself and your group. And yeah, it is important. You know, I think that, like you said, every time you're training and you go through a certain season, the evolution is natural, and it's also like you're hungry for it. As a teacher, you're hungry for it. Your students are going to be hungry for evolution, and so it's almost like a mandatory thing. I think, you know, the way that Guro and Gola started our group is definitely different than the way, you know, we teach and instruct now. And you know, I'm learning every day as, you know, I begin to, you know, teach and instruct in my way. And, you know, even though we're actual teachers as our profession, we still have to polish how we instruct, and we do that by, you know, taking a critical eye at our instruction, but also by continuing to learn. So, you know, all the more power to you.
Yeah, and we love to hear different journeys and how people approach it differently. Brother Paolo got you on the Henry Espada documentary, by the way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And he's going to spend a lifetime, you know, you could spend a lifetime specializing in just one aspect of PTK. I guess agreeing with what we're saying. For him, it's single knife and single stick, you know.
And if and you know, again, don't get caught up in trying to learn all the weapons categories. That, you know, if all you learn is single stick and single knife, that's all you need.
Hey,
That might be it for you.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right. That's exactly. You know, exactly. I'm that guy though. You know, I want to learn the blowgun. I want to learn the you know, and yeah, I want to learn the whip now. I saw Michael C. Prasad put out whipping in GT's backyard. I don't know if you saw this video with the bull whips, and I was like,
yeah, the Latigo. I think it's called Latigo. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I'll stop right there. You know what
No,
I mean?
no,
I
no,
was
no,
like,
no,
all right,
no,
I gotta
I'm
get
with
out
you.
there. People are gonna say, "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" But that's where I'm at with it. But that's why we all have our different journeys.
Hey, bro, you gotta get on that Indiana Jones shit sometimes, you know?
People are, could you see me here in Philly with the whip? I have a good brother. We remember we had that student that actually taught the bull whip here
Oh, wow.
in West Philly. Yeah, good brother, man, good dude. He actually wasn't a brother; he's a white guy. Great, but still a brother of humanity.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And was actually asking a lot of questions because he's like, "Look, I'm teaching this thing about the whip. There's all this stuff going on." And he was very humble, and he asked me some really solid, sincere questions about his passion for the whip, but also he didn't want to be misperceived. And but his heart was so gold, and he's so true. I was like, brother, rock on, teach your craft, man.
Yeah.
If anything, let it be it'll be a topic of conversation and educate.
Yeah.
But again, he was in our class and for a while, and man, he loved Pikiti. It was confusing for him,
And it is
I
for
hope
most
he's
people.
watching now. Say that again.
I said it is for some people. It's definitely confusing. Pikiti.
Yeah. Do you feel free to infuse or integrate Black culture into PTK? Do you feel you have permission to do that?
That's from Paulo Rubio.
That's from Paulo. Yeah.
How so? I mean, Black culture. I don't know what he means by that.
That's a good response question. If you could clarify for us, Paulo, do you feel free to infuse or integrate Black culture into PTK? I think that we all are going to bring our experience into instruction. We're all going to bring our culture. When we had Mandala Jason Jones out here, he's like a real bushman, bushcraft, like he's frontier living, and he's, and he's methodical. And so his use of the blade and how he carves and cuts, and, this guy, he's really, that's going to influence how he, Black or white, I think it's more environmental also. I'm coming out of the Bronx. And there's culture in that, and how I move and how I express myself, and my experience with fighting and violence, and so I don't know if that's helping to answer your question, Paulo.
Well, I'll say that
bring our experiences in. Yes, sir. Keep going. Sorry to cut you.
No, it's all right. I'll say this. Even going back to the jujitsu thing, you look at a system like Sanukus Ryu, or you look at Zujitsu Ryu. I would argue that that's Afro-American jiu-jitsu, because of the way that these brothers moved. It was very, unique unto them. Even some of the concepts and things like that, it's just like, damn, where did they come up with this? And it was environmental, some of that stuff, it just can't be taught. They just had it,
That's right. That's right. That's right. There's yeah, I don't want to limit what Black culture could possibly mean, so I'll hand it back to you. Bam.
Oh, damn.
There's a lot of nice counter responses going on here. So
that's it. I'm gonna sidestep and luwak that shit too, real quick.
He said, yeah, that answers it. Paulo, for us, and again, the climate of the times, we got to really watch, because things can be so misconstrued. But because the experience, the history of Kali under, the history of Kali and what it had to do to survive. It reminds me also when I hear the history of capoeira, and there's just, there's something I think about the struggle. There's something about the struggle, Paulo and Doug, and to the viewers, it's kind of hard to articulate. Don't want to offend or misarticulate, but there's something about the struggle that I think is hard to explain, and you just got to know it to understand it. And if you're Black, you understand it, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a Black struggle either. There's just something about the struggle.
Yeah, struggle in general. You're right.
Struggle in general. That makes its way, and because that's so much a part of Kali, and if you understand struggle, regardless, I think, of where you're coming from, you're gonna understand this system, you know? And I think that's one of the things that we can't forget in this divided time right now, you know, that we understand struggle and we understand pain and we train, and that's uniting us. What I like about what Brother Paolo did right there, I see what you did right there, my friend. Sometimes we don't want to ask the questions. You know, we're afraid to ask certain questions. We don't want to be offensive. We don't want to, and getting back to what you said about Brother Paolo, it's like he's going to challenge the status quo, you know, and if it came out wrong and if it's offensive, he's going to say, okay, I'm sorry. Well, let me articulate it a better way. But if I didn't get it out there at all, we'd never be able to have the conversation in the first place. So shout out to just asking the question.
Yeah, because there's also in a question like that, there's a huge possibility that that the people might be surprised of the answer, in the sense that if there was a certain situation where you felt a hardship or you answered it in a different way, to play devil's advocate, then people may not be ready or may be surprised to hear the answer.
That's right.
And it's because we often tend to have tunnel vision with how we express ourselves and live our lives until we have, an issue, or until we are forced to see outside of our own bubble. So, I think it's great to ask those questions. I think, like any system, it's hard to, to go into anything without representing who you are as a person. Right. So you ask him, I feel like I have no other choice but to represent being of African descent. And that's right. I have no choice, because what do you see when you look at me?
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's a movement, there's a way we move that is different. Don't want to offend. It's just I have different footwork lessons for different students, and I'm just gonna be real about that. But it raises a good point. I want to share a story that happened to me recently. I don't mean to do this while you're here on our guest, Doug. Please,
no, that's fine.
Free, and it might tie into our question about PTK unity and the future of PTK. You know what I'm saying? So I had a friend of mine that I know put some stuff up on Facebook, and at first I was like, and then I was confused. It really seemed like I wasn't offended. I was confused, like Jenna said. I was like, wow, I never knew this person to have this perspective. I did not comment on this man's posts. And no, don't do this, folks. I don't get into a back and forth. I messaged the man directly. Said, I have some questions. You appear misinformed. This is me coming out the gate, okay? My friend responded, okay? Not in a negative way. Tell me how I'm misinformed. We had a back and forth in the messaging, okay? He's not misinformed. We just disagree. But I was able to see that for myself and pick his brain and get his perspective, and then turn around and say, do you know that you can now appear to be misinformed just because of this? And that was where we were able, and the conversation was so good. And he I have to say, my friend, he humble, he was not humble. He said, okay, well, what could we do? What could I do? Tell me what to do. Tell me how to make it right. And I said, you know what? Let's have a phone conversation. He said, call me. I said, that's right. I'm going to call you. It followed up into a phone conversation. It was productive, and there's things that we disagreed on. There's a lot that we did agree on. And it was a healthy conversation, because it was kind of like we had to get over some uncomfortable things. We had to talk about some things that aren't being spoken about. He had to say some things. Look, I don't want to offend you, but I need you to. I wasn't offended. I was glad he hit the prerequisite. As the conversation kept going, now we're just talking. Nobody has to say, I don't mean to offend. It's just a full-fledged conversation. We were able to agree on things, disagree on things. I didn't lose a friend. We didn't have an all-out war in front of the community. And I think that, and if my friend is here, I hope he's watching and listening. thank you for that dialogue today. It was a great model for, I think, how we can have difficult conversations in our community.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Damn
Well,
it. Thank you for listening, man. Sorry for
no,
that. I had to get that off
no,
my
that's
chest. It's been on my mind
no,
all day.
no, that's fine, man. But it's real though. I mean, this is like the age of being offended. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what you need to understand and respect is the fact that somebody, may just have a different way of looking at things. And if it's different and you come to them as a man, you talk to them, and you can agree to disagree. It's okay to disagree. Just don't be disagreeable.
Hey, that's right. That's right. And we don't all want to agree.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I like the way, my wife cooked, her food, and I like the way my mom cooks her food too. And, sometimes, I'm not going to choose between my wife and my mom. All right. You know what's funny? My mom is actually in the house downstairs. She's visiting right now. So it's a lot of love in the house today.
That's great.
Anyway, good brother, the future of PTK, the unity of PTK. I spoke a long time. If you could just give us your thoughts, your perspective on how can we be more united moving forward?
Okay. Well, I'm gonna look in the camera on this one, man. First of all, what I don't want to see. Well, I'll go into what I don't want to happen. I don't want us to end up like American Kimpo. All right. Ed Parker, he had an amazing system. He had guys that he brought up, and each of them, they had certain attributes that were taught to them from the system. For instance, there was a guy by the name of Larry Tatum. He has one part. You have a brother named Ron Chappell. He has another part. And I don't know what happened, but it got down to being, well, I'm doing authentic Kimpo. No, I'm doing authentic Kimpo. I don't want that shit to happen to us. All right. I really don't want that to happen to us. So I think what it comes down to is this. You as a student, I don't care who it is that you train with. I don't care who it is that's at the head of your organization or group. You can't take on the offenses of your teacher because, honestly, that has nothing to do with you. That's more of an individual thing. What you need to look at is the system as a whole. So going forward, what I want to see, it'd be nice to have guys that are, even from, let's say, I'm just picking on the camp, but the SMF guys, for instance, it'd be nice to see those guys, work with somebody that's from the PTI group. It'd be nice to have guys that, are World Federation, to work with, other groups and, just kind of rally around the whole thing that we're a family, we're a fraternity, as it were. It's just, it's a small group of us and we have something very special and we don't need to piss it away, because of politics. I'll give you a little story, and it's kind of a sad story, but there was somebody that gave me some footage one time of some incredible footage of Paquiti Tertia. And when I ended up here in San Antonio and I chose the school that I went to, which again, it was a Paquiti Tertia, what you call it, a Tim Wade school, basically. I got there, I handed them that footage. They took the footage and threw it in the desk and they slammed it and they said, we don't do Paquiti like that down here. And I'm like, what the hell are you, that kind of took me back because again, at the core, Paquiti is all the same. It's footwork, it's ones and twos. Outside of that, it might differ a little, but the long answer, stop taking on people's offenses, stop trying to divide and conquer. If you claim you have something that's authentic, good for you. But don't piss on somebody else that's been in the game just as long or longer. I mean, for you to say that you have something that's authentic, then you have somebody that's been in the game 30 or 40 years that, was with Grandtuhon in the early 70s, and you're saying, well, that guy ain't doing it right. Man, get out of here. You're crazy. You're crazy. You lost your damn mind. You're crazy. It's all the same. It's all the same. You know, so I again, just drop the bullshit, man. Let's come together. Let's learn from each other. Let's continue to grow the art. There's no reason why people shouldn't know what Pikiti Tertia is, because you know, from the outside looking in, I always get asked political questions about Pikiti instead of just about the art and the effectiveness. Well, actually, it's one or two ways. You know, you get approached by these people that, you know, they're crazy about the knife or whatever the hell, or you get approached by these people and say, hey, what's really going on? How come this? How come that? That shouldn't even be a point of discussion. Who cares? It's about the art, you know. So that's what I want to see. I want to see us all come together. I want us to respect each other's space. If you don't agree with what somebody's doing, then don't train with them. It's as simple as that. If you don't like what I do or you don't like what somebody else does, don't train with them. But don't piss on them and say that what they're doing isn't the right thing. You know, so that's it. Unity.
Love it. That's wise words for the nation too, my friend. You know, we're a microcosm of the global community, PTK. So, you know, if the PTK community shouldn't bear on the scars of the instructor, maybe we as a nation need to learn about that too and should think about that as well. That's really interesting. Profound words, good brother.
Thanks, man.
And you know, over this pandemic, because there's been a lot more Zoom sessions, there have been more cross camps. I have seen, without naming names, and you know, I have seen more of, you know, and I'd love to see more of it. And if you haven't seen Jenna and I in any particular Zoom session, it's only because of our crazy hectic lifestyle. But we, you know, we're passionate about PTK, so we're talking to the community out there. Please continue to send us invites to all of the Zoom sessions from all the instructors of all the camps, because we want to make it out there.
And, you know, I love what you said, because, you know, a wise person once told me that once you share something with someone, it does not belong to you, in the sense that we have this whole idea of what belongs to who, you know, what belongs to this person. But when you share because you're accepting that something doesn't belong to you, in the sense that you can't tell someone that the knowledge they have doesn't belong to them. You know, the knowledge that you have, it belongs to you. It's within you, and it's what you're using. So very wise words, Brother Doug. Thank you.
Yeah. The comments, they've been rolling on. We haven't been doing as good of a job tonight running through them. Frankie, Sensei Frankie saying he had great teachers of all ethnicities, going back to some of the earlier conversation. I think that's more than just important. It's how I learned the art and how I fell in love with karate, jujitsu, and Kali. You know, the martial arts community the warriors might be the leaders right now. We have to set the example. Paolo has been shouting us out along the way. Ali Johnson shouted out the Aitas people in the Philippines. He was hearkening back to our conversation about struggle, similarities in struggle, I believe. Nomad is also MNG Royce agreeing about great communication. It's going to better ourselves. Paolo is saying in the coming weeks, we might see GT take a different tone, more clarity, organization, and more tolerance. Hopefully we'll see that. You know, we know how the Grandtuhon could be. That would be great. That would be awesome. We all know when that, we know,
Yeah.
It's just a couple of flicks, a couple of adjustments. We're going to be on the same page, family. We have to keep doing what we're doing, all right? Which is being a leader in our own community. And Citadel, Combat Arena, Dogma, terminology, and the logo on your t-shirt are all that is separating all of us. Once that all falls away, we will all be training as a family together under GTS. Yeah, I don't know if you're speaking about us specifically, Morgan, about the logos on our t-shirts or just in general. Logos are just division. But I would love us all one day to definitely be united, definitely pay homage to the Grandtuhon and what he's done for all of us with PTK and the legacy he's left behind, the amazing instructors that have carried the torch, and we're all the result of that. I look forward to that as well. And I think I read all of the major commentary. Frankie has the last one. He came from a Kempo background, and he's glad not to be part of the drama because you had mentioned Kempo back in the day. One last question, sir. EDC gear dump. Are you carrying any weapons on you? That's a common question. Mentioned, Morgan always asks it. What's your common carry, or what do you have close by?
Well, here, or I'll play the game, okay? I know Morgan, he likes to ask that stuff, and I'll answer his question before he asks. No, I don't play with the Bali song, man. I'm sorry. I never really got into it too much. I know how to do one basic opening, but that's about it. But close by, I have a mini Gununting. Let's see here, it's kind of hard to get out the scabbard. But there it is. There's the Gununting. It's kind of stained up. I was using it the other day to clear some brush in my front yard. So that stays close by. It's pretty decent. Let's see
that
here.
is. Can I see the spine on it? I'm sorry. I make you pull it out again.
No, it's fine. No accidents. There we go.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so I was lucky. I picked this up from Tuhon Leslie. He, if you look on Collie Gear, he has clearance stuff sometimes, and he calls it seconds or scraps. And what he might consider scraps, I consider like masterpieces. So I saw this, and he was like, "There's a flaw to this." I'm like, "It don't matter. Send it. I want it." I've been wanting a Gununting for a while, so this is one of the first ones I picked up.
That actually looks on the larger side.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is actually small. This is a shorter one. Yeah, so he was selling these a while back. So I have that. I have a student, one of my former students, he was a knife maker. And that's how he ended up finding me. Whoops, there goes my Gununting. And he made this blade for me. It has a micarta grip. Nice. And he named this one the KD Defender. So this thing is like razor sharp. It's a one of a kind.
That's awesome.
It's a nice little blade. I carry that.
The KD Defender for Kali Doug?
Yeah, KD Defender.
That's awesome, brother. That's beautiful, man.
And then, the monkey fist, so this is a steel shot right here. So if I knock it down, you hear that?
Yeah.
So I have that.
You wear that on your keychain?
No, I keep this in my pocket because this is pretty long.
I see that. Nice.
So if you reach in your pocket, you can wrap this and you have it cupped. And we like to slap, so there it is right there. You have that, and it still has a little bit of length to where you can do some short manipulation. Or if you want to train solo, you can just work on your movements here, right?
Nice.
Just kind of play that game. This is Texas. I'm not going to get into the other stuff that I carry, but it's around and close by.
I got you.
Yeah, leave it at that. But that's kind of a glimpse of a few of the things that I carry around.
Did you put that paracord on, or did it come like that?
It came like that. It was actually a gift. A lot of the blades and the weapons that I have, they're gifts. I have a student, they'll show up and give me like a karambit, or they'll come back with some type of blade. That a student that gifted me the Defender. I was shocked. He's like, yeah, because he was asking me questions the whole time we were training. He's like, what size blade would you like? I'm like, I want a blade that's probably about, say, 4 to 6 inches long. He's like, do you like micarta? I'm like, what's micarta? He told me what it was, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. And then he came back a few weeks later and he had the knife. So
that's beautiful, brother.
Nice.
When your students give you a gift, man.
Yeah.
There's certain gifts that students give, and it's from their heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when we receive that as instructors, it's almost like, oh wow, I'm just doing what I love,
Right.
I didn't realize it's impacting your life in this manner. And whether a small gift or a big gift, you have students who just want to say thank you in their way, and it's very humbling.
Well, and you're right about not knowing what it's doing in people's lives. My student that's on, I don't know if he's still on, JJ or Gennaro, he reached out one time. I had went into a hiatus, and I get at this point sometimes where I get impatient, with the students, and so I took a break. And he actually reached out, man, and he told me, he's like, look, when you gonna come back and teach? I'm like, bro, I ain't doing that now. I'm taking my break. And he's like, look, I need this in my life, man. You don't know what it's doing for me, all this stuff. So you're right. You never know. You never know, what type of blessing you are in somebody's life.
Mhm.
And you're just doing it out of the love in your heart.
Right.
You know what I mean? And your passion, like you were saying.
That's right. And then going back to Jenna, it's like when you share, and then you share that, and it's how do you put a value, on something like that?
Right.
Shout out to all the students out there giving their teachers gifts from the heart, man. It makes us better teachers. Kali Doug, it's been an honor, man. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, likewise, man. This is good. I was thinking that I wouldn't have too much to say, but you brought it out of me, man.
Hey, it's almost 10 o'clock. Like I said, I got family downstairs. I gotta get to the family, brother. This is probably the most we've spoken, but it feels like we've been speaking for years.
Yeah.
You have a very down to earth, very approachable style about you. And you're very humble. You clearly know a lot. You're just very humble with your information. And so I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm glad we got to learn about you. And I'm glad the community got to learn about you as well, man. I hope you guys learn a little bit more about Brother Doug. Look him up on Facebook as Kali Doug, Southwestern Texas Kali on Instagram. Check out his Spotify. Spotify is just one of the platforms. His podcast, The Sticks and Blades podcast. It's got to be exact. The Sticks and Blades podcast. And he's a huge support on our show. On top of that, he's a viewer on the show, always adding great commentary.
Hey, can I give a quick shout out, man? There's a couple of people I wanted just to recognize before we take off. First and foremost, Tuhon Brandon Jordan, if you're watching, man, thank you so much for being on the show, accepting me into like your Zoom classes and just sharing your knowledge. I want to say what's up to Guru J. Pugao out in Oakland, California of Assigned Cortal Cadena Group. I want to say what's up to my man Damon Stiff up in Austin, Texas of the Historical African Martial Arts Association. My man Alessandro Ashanti of Serrata Eskrima. Unfortunately, there were some riots in Phoenix the other day, and they got into his school, stole stuff, and they set fire to the place, unfortunately. So he's in the rebuild process.
It's terrible.
But yeah, want to send good energy, vibes, and prayers to him, man, and hopefully he can get things up. And also Paulo Rubio, man, I gotta say, you keep doing what you're doing, man. There's people that talk shit about what you do, but keep being you, man, because you're a real dude, and we need more people that are 100% real and say what they mean, but in a respectful way. And you're definitely doing that.
Yeah, keep the fire blazing, Brother Paulo. We support you. Thank you, Brother Kali Doug. And thank you, the viewer, for making this an interactive experience and not just a two-way conversation. It's the viewer like you, as they say, that are the reason we're doing this show, to be a community as one voice. That being said and done, loyalty, wisdom, respect.
Life, health, and success.
See you next week, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Salute. Stand by, Brother Doug, for 1 second.
Yes, sir.